center in our community, and we see the world as our community. Number two, to create new education models for success, and then take those out to scale, again, in our community, which we see as the world. We have this really unique ecosystem within ASU Prep Academy, because those 12 schools actually represent almost every socioeconomic level that you could think of in the United States. We have one school that is in the lowest socioeconomic or highest poverty zip code in the state. And then we have the other end of the spectrum where we have a STEM school, a K-12 STEM school that sits on our Polytechnic campus. We have a Indian reservations. We also have a small little school in downtown Tempe. And then we have an urban school in downtown Phoenix, which was our first school, which was a turnaround school at the time, 10 years ago. So as you can see, we have this really unique opportunity within ASU to actually learn a great deal about K-12 education within our university institution. And what we hope to do, and what we have been doing, is creating this continuum of learning where students can come in anywhere as a learner, whether they are 4 or whether they are 94. And there will be a place for them to learn at Arizona State University. A little bit about the backdrop, if we think about where we've been and then where we are now. And this pictorial here kind of demonstrates all the different types of programs that exist today. We have district programs, state programs, multi-state programs, national programs, and certainly global programs. ASU Prep Digital serves the globe. We not only serve our Arizona State, in our Arizona State, our students there, but we are serving students nationally and internationally around the globe. One of the things that we really hope to accomplish is we really want to connect our students around the globe to each other, so they have the opportunity to be together in classes and learn from each other and really discover diversity in our world firsthand together. We have part-time programs in our world, in our country, where kids are taking 1 or 2 courses at a time or just taking summer school online. And then we have full-time schools. ASU Prep Digital has a full-time school and a part-time program. We have asynchronous learning taking place in our online programs, and then we have synchronous programs that are taking place like we are doing right now. And so as we think about all the different ways that we are now serving our students in online environments, it's vast. There are many, many opportunities for our families and our students now to work digitally, truly worldwide. So why are we here? So it's kind of funny. I'll kind of take you back to when Florida Virtual School started, when I started my digital career. And at that time, no one really knew what virtual learning was. Certainly no one saw a reason to have it at the K-12 level. There were certainly some university programs, as we have already established. But at the K-12 level, people were kind of like, why would we do this? And how could this be a good way for students to learn? So we spent a lot of time trying to prove ourselves. And as we looked at how we created the model at that time, our goal was to create a learning experience for our students, which was truly focused on putting the student at the center of every decision that we made. We were given the opportunity by the state of Florida, by our legislature and our leadership, and by our governor, Governor Bush at the time, to make it up as we went along and to come back and tell them how we thought it should be done. It gave us an opportunity to just start with a completely fresh slate and truly think about, if we were going to design a program, if we were going to reinvent education, putting that student at the center of all our decisions, what would change? And we quickly learned that almost everything would change. How students learned in terms of eliminating the calendar, eliminating start and end times during the day, eliminating start and end times for classes. Students could work at their own pace. Kids who were ready could move faster. Kids who needed more time could take more time without being penalized. The goal was mastery, and the goal was we wanted to evaluate ourselves and our students by what they knew when they left us, not what they didn't know while they were with us. And if you think about how we grade our students pretty much all over the world, we grade them on what they don't know while they're with us, as opposed to what they have learned when they leave us. So our focus was, we wanted every student to master the content before they left us. And we had that opportunity. So why are we here? Well, there's 10 drivers of blended learning that you see on the screen right now. And just to think about a little bit, where we are right now is we're hyper-focused on how we personalize learning for our students in the United States, and I think worldwide. We have come to learn that students are all different. All of us are different. We learn differently, and so why would we be in this same pace, same time, same room scenario and expect for our students to all learn at their highest level? I heard an analogy today on a podcast that I thought was awesome. The analogy was that if you were a basketball player, and I'm from originally Kentucky, so if any of you know anything about the United States basketball, that's a big basketball state, so I like this analogy. But if you are a basketball player and you are trying to improve your free throws, well, what are you going to do? You're going to practice those free throws over and over and over again. And if you miss, you're going to probably practice more. But the point is, you have to know if you missed. Well, the way that we teach our kids right now, without digital tools, they don't know when they missed. They do their work, they turn it in, they might get feedback in a day or 2 or 3, but before they actually get feedback on many of their assignments, we've taken them on to the next chapter. And so I really want us to think about that analogy as we think about the tools that we should be using when our children, and give them the opportunity for immediate feedback. So immediate feedback, improve the ability to personalize the learning experience and give students the potential for individual progress, allow them to advance and allow them to take more time. We also want to really improve student engagement and the motivation around learning. Learning should be fun. Kids should want to do school, come to school, learn. So think about the engagement and the motivation. The ability, when we think about on the educator side, we want to develop tools that work for the educator. We have a teacher in many of our states, if not all of our states. So why is that? And what can we do to reinvent the job itself so that the educator loves the work that they signed up to do, and why they became a teacher becomes re-energized and apparent to them. So we want to give them tools that make their role easier and give them the opportunity to spend as much time doing what they do best, which is working with students, as opposed to paperwork and minutia. We want them to have the ability to use data analytics in order to, again, have the tools work for them and help them make decisions about their students' learning. And then student and parent adoption of learning in general. You know, we live in a different world now. Our kids today are practically born with those devices in their hands. This is the generation that will never know life and a computer. I received a voice memo from my 6-year-old grandson the other day that he made on his dad's phone when his dad and his baby sister were napping and on to work. The internet was down in the house, and he was just incredibly frustrated and talking into the phone about the fact that the internet was down and he couldn't do anything and he couldn't do his schoolwork. 6 years old. So drivers to blended learning. Why are we doing this? So a little bit about what we are doing at ASU Prep Digital. We have 4 which we work with schools and students on. We have our curriculum challenges, and we develop curriculum. And as we think about developing curriculum, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. We have a very focused point of view about how curriculum that is developed today should be developed to engage the learner, to engage the teacher, to provide a facilitated, highly personalized environment for our students, parents, and teachers. But curriculum challenges, how do we develop the right structure to support the individual student? What does that look like? Especially when we have classes of students with 20, 30, sometimes 40 individuals in that room with one teacher. Of 30 students in a classroom at a time without technology and digital tools. Simply, he or she can't. How can students receive accredited U.S. high school diplomas from countries? Students that either want to come to the United States to go to the university or want to broaden their learning for other places they may want to go in the world and add that to their transcript. We can provide that opportunity to students all around the world. And what are the best classes for students to think about when they want to get on a pathway to college? How do we map that out for them so that we can help create the journey as opposed to them being on a scavenger hunt to figure it out themselves? And then how about content? There's so much content out there. There's a lot of free content out there. There's a lot of teacher-created content out there. And then there's a lot of tested, tried and true content out there. So how do we find content that has been tested with students and verified and validated? How do we engage those students to learn with that content? What does that look like? And can we find adaptive learning tools where the actual tools learn the learner and get smarter with every student that actually participates in that course, in that application? We can do that. So with teaching, again, we talk about engagement. 30, 40 kids in a class, one teacher. How do you keep those kids engaged? Digital tools. When we also think about just learning in general, where can I find a learning experience that's tailored just to me, the learner, so that I'm not having to keep up with the student next to me or wait for the student behind me. And if I have another interest, that I have some type of a learning experience where I can learn through my interest and not through the interest of just whatever happens to be in the global textbook. So we are faced with so many challenges. The transition to online learning can also be a challenge, and that is in its own category, which we have all experienced lately. And changes are usually driven by challenges. So if we think about what we've been thrust into for the last 3 months, would we ever have thought the entire world all at one time would be trying to do distance learning? Heavens no. We've been trying to get people to experience distance learning and try it out for 25 years. But all of a sudden, in 3 months' time, the entire world is trying to figure it out together. So as a team, we've really learned to work with the different aspects of the challenges to develop an agile, multi-dimensional experience and create partnership work for both the partner and for ASU Prep Digital to create an amazing ecosystem for our students together. We also created different structures and different models. So no two models that when we work with a collaborative partner, typically no two of those experiences look the same. It depends on the needs of the partner and the students that we're serving in that particular relationship. So I want to talk a little bit about the teaching model. So I've just spent time talking about engagement, personalization, different types of tools that attract the learner to want to learn and give them that personalized experience. So how do we do it? First of all, we do use what we consider to be very good digital tools, as opposed to the other way around, and that's key. They're tried and they're true and they're tested. But we also have a very different teaching model, and this infographic that you see here shows you the shift in our classrooms that are happening in our partner schools. You see the student at the center, and then you see that student surrounded by support. We have an ecosystem of the parent, a student success coach, a learning success coach, and the teacher, all working together on behalf of that student. And I'll talk about the professor in a moment. But if you think about this, the parent has to be part of our stool. We have a three-legged stool. That stool to support the student. Parents have probably been more engaged in their child's learning and education than in the last 100 years. Kids weren't going to school to learn. They were learning in their home with their parents, with their learning tools. And lo and behold, many parents' eyes were opened as to their child's learning tendencies, their capabilities, their ability to focus, their engagement, love or learned a lot in the last 3 months. So the teacher, our teachers have the focus on the academics for that student. So they're doing the direct one-on-one instruction, they're giving the academic feedback, they're assigning the assignments, and they're doing the grading. And teacher, now the student is supported by what we call a learning success coach. A success coach is exactly what the name implies. It is someone who works directly with the students to help them deal with college and career planning, goal setting, learning how to manage progress monitoring, and parent communication. They're that single focus for parent communication. So when the child disappears, which kids have a tendency to do sometimes in distance learning, when the child sometimes disappears, then the learning success in our classroom models, where we are doing blended learning in our classrooms, which is most of what we do with our collaborative partners if we are all in school together, that learning success coach, again, works directly with the teacher and with the learning facilitator on campus to make sure that we don't lose track of any student. We're using the data to analyze exactly where that student is and what they need every moment to continue to advance. So it's a really fabulous model in terms of how we wrap support around our students. So the professor, one of the things that ASU Prep Digital is most known for is the fact that it is embedded in the university, and that our president, President Michael Crow, is committed to students, as I said before, whether they are 4 or they are 94, they have a place to come into our institution to learn whatever it is that they desire to learn. He also, very smart man, wanted to create an environment where students could move on and advance when they were ready. Somebody, I don't know who we is, but we designed these boxes called elementary school or primary school. And then we decided that one of them was going to be 5 or 6. And then another one would be 3 years, you know, 14. And then we'd finish up with 4 years of, and most of our students at the end of high school would be 18 or 19 years old. And then they would go off to another box called college, which was again 4 years. So what we've done, we've removed all those barriers of age and grade level. And we have created pathways for students at any grade and at any age level when they are ready to begin college in high school. So if a student is 13, and we have one, 14, 15, 16, and they are ready to advance their learning, they have a pathway into the majors at ASU. They actually start and have the opportunity to begin taking bona fide, authentic ASU classes online. Yep, they might be in a class with someone who's 30 years old, and that's where that learning success coach and that parent comes into play. We work very closely with the student and the school to navigate post-secondary education for this child. That's included in our program, and some of our students are able to graduate high school with 50 plus ASU college credits at a significantly reduced price. And that's because our president wants to reduce time for everybody. Every learner has the opportunity to go to college. You'll also see over here on the left, we do have an ELL, or English Language Learner Focus, with our teachers. And they have been trained to work with students of all different diversities. And our content itself is equipped with resources to support learning, with mini guides, vocabulary, oral assessments, mini video lessons, all to support the learner, regardless of their language or their struggles with English. So this is just a screenshot of one of our flagship courses, and my colleague, Lisa Edgar, is going to put a link into the chat box so that you can take a little course tour of Bio Beyond. When I call it a flagship course, that is because this type of quality is the quality that we are aiming for in all the new development of courses that we are in the midst of working on and through. This particular course starts with a question, and the question is, are we alone in the universe? And each of the modules capitalizes on a student's curiosity. And so as the students start to work on these different modules, this one happens to be into the cell, and it actually takes them into the cell with a virtual reality type experience. The students all have a different experience depending on the pathway that they choose. And again, this course gets smarter with every new student that we serve, and more pathways are developed. Our goal is to engage, to spark curiosity, and we do think that this is a most beautiful course as well. We call it our Pixar course. But this is our flagship, this is what we're aiming towards, and this is what we believe students have a right to experience in their digital experience, in their digital platform. So, what can we do for you or for our partners? These are our implementation models that you see here in front of you. Training and professional development. We have a full-time teaching, so we can do all the full-time teaching if that is what a collaborative partner would like. We are most focused on upskilling or enabling our collaborative partners to actually do the teaching themselves. but we can mentor their teachers, we can co-teach, and as I said, we can actually do the teaching from a distance with a highly qualified teacher. We have a new teacher orientation. We do adaptive learning training for our teachers. We have lead teachers and mentor teachers that we train and give ongoing support. We have professional learning communities that support our staff. And in that process, we'll do book talks, we'll do different, but again, that's all how we can train a full-time teaching staff. We also have an adjunct teaching staff, and we can train our collaborative partners adjunct teaching staff. Again, you'll see most of the same types of trainings that we do for that model as well, and we just tailor it to a teacher that is part-time. And then the school partnership support. We have a blended learning specialist that comes into the schools, either virtually or in person, depending on the situation, and trains the teachers at that school site on blended learning and the implementation around blended learning. That blended learning specialist also specializes in adaptive learning training. So the course that I just spoke about, Bio Beyond, the training goes with that course would be the training that we would provide for our teachers to really understand how to use those adaptive learning tools, again, that they work for the teacher. And the data analytics, etc., are there for them, and we teach them how to use that. All the technical training, as well as learning or lab facilitator training for the person who is on site supporting the students while we are at a distance. We also work with our Teachers College at ASU to provide training as well as opportunities for credentials and badges and degrees, if that is something that they would want. Then special workshops and training, these are customized, and we have an opportunity to customize a workshop specifically for our collaborative partners. Oftentimes, we have done the same type of workshops with our own teachers. And so almost all of the time, anything that we do with our collaborative partners, we've done in-house first with our own teachers, our own students, and our own parents. But again, blended learning, other webinars and workshops. We're now doing parent workshops, teaching parents how to ready their students in a remote learning environment, and teaching students how to do that when they just got sent home. And we forget, teaching and learning in an online or a blended environment is different. People have not been trained to teach that, and most of our learners have not been trained, and I do mean trained, to learn that way. So collectively, our team at ASU Prep Digital has over 30 years of experience in digital education. We know that the future is and can be very uncertain. We are all living in that time right now. For us, we believe that the future of education should be personalized. It should be adaptive. It should be flexible. And it should not matter whether the student is at home or the student is in a building we call school, or out in our environment, in our world, traveling the world, learning as they go. Technology should be leveraged to empower education to serve our students in a very personalized way so that we can actually meet every learner's individual needs. So learning should not be confined to time. It should not be a place we've certainly learned. And we also should not define it or confine it by demographics. It should happen anywhere, anywhere. So one of the things that I've always liked to say is that school, which if you look it up in the dictionary, the Webster's dictionary, it will tell you that it is a noun. It's a place. Well, I believe that school should be a verb. It should be something that we are actively doing regardless of where we are, regardless of where we are sitting. and regardless of where we're going to be tomorrow. Learning should take place everywhere. So who is this little girl that you see on the screen now? That might be your child, that might be your grandchild, that might be your friend, your best friend's child. We all play a very important role in her journey to a successful and a happy life. It's our job, it's our responsibility, and it's our commitment to prep these students for college, prep them for careers, and prep them for life. I thank you for your time. I appreciate, again, being invited to speak with you tonight, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Really insightful, and I think we learned a lot here. And we have about 5,000 teachers now, being audience. So I think all of them giving you a digital applause now.
Thank you.
It is very nice. So do you still have time for question and answer?
I do.
Okay, great. Let me talk to the audience. Bapak Ibu sekalian, sekarang Anda bisa bertanya. Kalau yang mau menggunakan bahasa Inggris bisa langsung raise hand. Nanti saya akan unmute. Oke, saya mulai dengan Pak Lalu Gufran Hadi. Silakan, Pak. Ya, silakan. Belum bisa ya. Oke, kita
some questions. Andrea, do you want to just?
Yeah, I will start with the one who I will try Parana.
Thank you. Is it already unmute? I'd like to appreciate Yulie has presented to us about how the visual virtual learning. But the things is what we lose.
Okay, Pak Rizky, go ahead.
Okay. The thing that sometimes we forget about the emotional connection between teachers and students is really like usually missing from the virtual learning, because sometimes we don't get the emotional warmth, we don't get the interaction, the affections while doing the virtual. How would you what do you think about it? What do you think about it? Is there any solution about how to implement or how to achieve the same affection that is from the offline classroom with the virtual classroom? I think that's all. Is it clear enough?
Okay, Julie, do you understand what the question is?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
Go ahead.
So it is a great question. It is one that is frequently asked, and I would say that at ASU Prep Digital, we very much focus on high tech and high touch. And our goal is that our teachers know our students better than they have ever known a student in a classroom. The teacher and the students have a unique opportunity to connect one-on-one, and then the students have a unique opportunity to connect in small groups without a great deal of peer pressure when the teacher facilitates online discussions and activities, etc. But you have to design online activities, to your point, that bring students together to have these social emotional times together outside of just the learning. So we have an assortment of clubs, whether that be student council or a chess club or a math club. We actually had a group of our students this year plan a prom, and they were going to actually come together from all over the country for the prom before graduation. The students came up with that. We also plan different kinds of activities for kids who live in the same region, for them to come together in, like on a weekend for a field trip, so to speak. And we actually plan those for kids in regions in different places throughout the country. We did it for a virtual school. We plan to do it as we scale here, so that kids can get to know other kids that are actually in their learning environment. I think the other thing that is really incredibly important is that's why I emphasize so much that the parent has to be part of that three-legged stool. That child has to have other interactions. They have to have other social engagements outside of the learning. And what we've learned over the last 25 years with parents who homeschool their students, they typically spend about 3 to 4 hours a day schooling, and then those children are involved in other activities for the remainder of the day where they're actually socializing with other students, they're playing, they're doing music lessons or sports activities, etc. And so you have to be very deliberate about how to create the human connections. But I will tell you that most of our students will tell you that they know their teacher at ASU Prep Digital better than they have known any teacher they've ever had in their traditional school.
Thank you, Julie. Now, second question from Bu Yanti Rosdiana Berutu. You can go ahead, ask Bu Yanti. Hello. Okay, if not, then let's next question from Bu Dermawati. Would you like to ask a question?
Hello, thank you, Bapak. Good
Yeah.
morning, Bu Miss Julie.
Good morning.
I want to ask you, and frankly, I'm this part at virtual learning. This year we have virtual learning just by an accident because of the. I would like to ask you, should we prepare to make the school, the teachers, since you extended from the curriculum, we plan the curriculum, we time the 3 years. Can you give us some tips to be successful in teaching learning from many factors like curriculum and the others, from the top, the most important things to the least? Thank you.
Sure. So I think we all agree that how everyone was thrust into virtual learning 3 months ago is not ideal, and nor would we like to replicate that. Teachers need to have the opportunity to be trained and to learn how to teach differently. And so, as you described, first and foremost, we have to get our teachers ready. And we have to get them mentally ready as well as physically ready for a new way of teaching and learning. In an online environment, a teacher's role really changes. It changes to much more of, the cliche of a guide on the side or a facilitator of learning. And we spend a lot of time teaching how to learn as opposed to what to learn. And so we become much less of a giver of information, which is what teachers have always been, is we kind of take everything in our brain and dump it into the student's brain and try to make them smarter. And we know in today's world that none of us are smarter than this little device here. And so most importantly is getting teachers to understand that their role has changed in this type of environment, and that they need to teach students how to learn differently. With that said, secondly, and equally as important, is having a solid curriculum that again works for the teacher and the teachers can feel confidence in using with their students. One of the things that happened 3 months ago when everybody just went home is teachers were like overnight given tools that they potentially had never used, had never had training or experience with, and had to go home and start creating content on their own. And teachers were not trained to be textbook writers or publishers or software developers. They were trained to teach content, most often other content that someone else had developed and had vetted and had put in their hands as a solid curriculum tool. So finding a curriculum that are and that will work for the teacher so that the teacher isn't spending mountains of time creating online lessons, which is very, very difficult as they go into this type of experience. That's what I would say is patience. Really important to take some baby steps. We didn't get to do that 3 months ago either because everybody was sent home and tried to do everything at once to replicate the classroom. I would advise that you don't try to replicate the traditional classroom in a fully at a distance model or in a blended model. You want to reinvent. You want to use the tools to work differently for teaching and for learning. You have an opportunity to literally personalize and don't think about replicating. Think about being again with that student at the center of your decisions. And then finally, making sure the parents really understand what this is all about and how they can be supportive and helpful. It's not going to be perfect right out of the gate. And I think it's important for parents to know that and for students to know that, and for you to give your parents and your students the license and the opportunity to share back what's going well and what isn't going well so that you can adjust and improve your program along the way. And so those are the tips that I think are most important. The last thing I'll say right now is pretty interactive because now we're having answers, but I just spent 30 minutes talking at you, and I would be willing to guess that many of you might have been doing some email while you were listening to me, maybe talking to a colleague or a child occasionally if you're in your home. Easy to get distracted. So be careful how you use Zoom. Taking Zoom and trying to replicate your classes by doing lecture over Zoom is like, it's incredibly tiresome for the teacher and the student, and it will not be. This tool should be used for delivering information, for having dialogue, but not overused. It's a fabulous tool for what we're doing and what we're trying to do, but don't overuse it.
Good. Thanks, Julie. Let me move the chat box here. There is an interesting question asking you whether you have experience in delivering blended learning or online learning to vocational schools, vocational studies, trade schools. How would that be possible?
It is possible for us to deliver instruction and blended learning to any school. We don't, our focus has not been on delivering those specific CTE courses. We have some, but most of our courses are college prep. And so we can deliver the core courses into those schools in a blended learning or at a distance, either one, very effectively.
Okay, thank you. Another interesting question. How about assessment in distance or remote learning? How do you assess students effectively, using blended learning, online learning, distance learning like this?
That's another really good question, because I think all of us worry about and should be mindful about academic integrity, whether you're in a traditional classroom or you are in an online environment. And so when we think about assessments in an online environment, we work to embed those assessments into the content. Students aren't even aware they're being assessed, and that data is being collected on the back end through the analytics, so that we can see what that learner knows and is doing well, and then the course actually will adapt to go back and scaffold the learning for that student in the areas that they are having difficulty. The courses that are not that sophisticated yet, we have many different ways that we assess students. Obviously, through formative assessment that is embedded in the course, through just assessment assignments like we would do in a traditional classroom. But probably the killer app for us is what we call a discussion-based assessment. And a discussion-based assessment is a one-on-one conversation between the student and the teacher, where the teacher takes all the information that they've gathered about the student. They look at what that student has done in terms of the lessons that they have completed and where their gaps in learning are. And they actually create an individualized oral conversation with the student to kind of dive into the areas where the student should know the material or may be weak in that particular area. And then from that, the teacher can then customize next steps or a path for that student moving forward. And the other thing that some schools do, some schools actually have assessments where they use the video capability of something like ProctorU, which I'm assuming you've probably heard of, where the student actually takes an assessment in a videoed environment from their distant location, where the teacher is actually able to observe. Indra, you're on mute.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to give the chance to Pak Asep Denny from Pakuan University. Please go ahead, Pak.
Okay, thank you, Pak Indra. Good morning, Julie. I would some questions. I am a lecturer in the University of Pakuan, private university. The location is southern part area from Jakarta, about 1 hour. Julie, this is my concerns, how to implement the online learning. This is especially in situations. My university force all the students to use online learning. So this is new normal for us, how we push the students to familiar with online coursings, because as you know, almost in Indonesia, students not too familiar with online learning, because the culture I saw in my university, especially the students not too familiar with this online learning, but because of these situations, they must study about this. The problem is in our culture, for my student especially. So I need your suggestion and your explanation how to make this core to be continued, not only these current situations, but in the future, because we have to focus on the high tech in the future. And I really want to a faculty. I am just elected as the dean for the period of 2020 until 2025. So I would like to implement this kind of study, not but also in the future. How I can make the collaboration with you in the future. That's all. Thank you.
So first of all, I would invite you, when the time is right and when we can travel, I would invite you to come to Arizona State University for a visit, and
thank you.
Very much would like you to meet the team that works at the university level that has created ASU Online, and has been very successful over the last, I think, probably 8 to 10 years of that implementation. As we are moving forward, and how our president and our leadership at the university is thinking about this, is that we will never go back to where we were in terms of, what we called normal before. And so, our new normal, as you said, will give students different choices in how they learn, and give our professors, our staff, our teachers different choices in how they teach. And so we actually at ASU are implementing 5 models for August, for the fall. And, obviously one of the models is that students will be invited back to campus, and we will obviously are figuring out what it looks like in terms of as all are. But then also asynchronous learning, where most of the learning is online. Students will have that choice, and teachers will have that choice. Professors have that choice to teach. That's ASU online primarily. Then we also have another program that we're calling ASU Sync. And ASU Sync is really utilizing tools like Zoom and WebEx to have live interaction and live classrooms, so to speak, in a virtual environment. So your format like we're having right now. And then another model is our what we call open scale, and that is, it's an online environment, but there's more adaptive tools, there's more interaction. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is that we're giving our students and our faculty choices. So as everybody's getting kind of started down this pathway, from of people that were in ASU Online, and they were the ones that created the courses and taught the courses online, and then everybody else, you know, obviously went to a classroom and delivered instruction. And so with everybody now having to move to online, as you're experiencing, we're trying to think about, okay, as we bring people back, whether it's the students or the faculty, how do we continue the learning around technology-enabled instruction and digital tools and maximizing any learning experience with technology? So a lot of training, a lot of encouragement, a lot of choice. You know, so we're not forcing our students and we're not forcing our faculty, but we're giving them options, tools, and training.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And we would love to collaborate with you. I know that our most interested in connecting with you. This,
you.
you know.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Pak Asep. Julie, there's a lot of questions here for you, but unfortunately, our time is up. So I think I will get, you know, some of the questions through email.
Okay.
And then
we'll be happy to respond in email.
Or your team, you know, to answer. Great. Then again,
perfect.
Thank you very much for your time here, your experience. It's really inspire us to this way. So again, it's an honor to have you here, and you can leave the room now if you may. We have another one more presenter to present.
All right. Thank you very much, and the honor was mine. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bapak Ibu sekalian, berikutnya adalah dari absen Pak Zanipar Siadari.